Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the revamped Salebox for the 1st of March 2014. My name is TotalBiscuit. I wouldn't say rounding up this week's Steam deals because that's not true anymore. So, here's what's happened. Valve has allowed pretty much any developer to put their game on sale without Valve's involvement whenever they damn well please. What does that mean? Currently, there's over 100 games on sale on Steam, and I expect that to get a hell of a lot worse. So this has made trawling through the sales very difficult. As a result of that, I got my thinking cap on and said to myself, you know what might be useful here? Some kind of top picks of the week kind of show. And hey, we've already got that in the form of Salebox, but this time around, we're gonna fish through the piles and piles of terrible sale games to find some of the good ones. So you will at least have some recommendations. I'm picking games that are at least good, and of course, the ones that end up here are either ridiculously cheap, ridiculously good, or hopefully both. And I will provide you with information on each of them. You'll also find a bit of info, including the price, on the screen in the left sidebar. And of course, I will give you my rundown and recommendation for each one and tell you exactly why it is on my list. For today's episode, the games are in no particular order, so do not think that game number 1 is better than game number 7, although if you guys fancy it, I will do more like a chart every week, if you would prefer that. You may also see more than one show every week, because who the hell knows how many games are going to go on sale. Pretty ridiculous. Do keep an eye on the left sidebar because it will tell you when the game goes off sale as well, so that's fairly important if you are trying to catch up on this show a little bit late. Some of these games may not be available anymore. So let's begin, shall we, with Trine Complete. Now, if you want to, you can just buy Trine 1 on its own. I would recommend Trine Complete. I think that's a better deal. Trine is a good game. Trine 2 is an amazing game. Absolutely phenomenal. And Trine Complete will give you Trine 1, Trine 2, and the DLC for Trine 2. I think that's a pretty good deal. If you are looking for something really, really cheap, then by all means just pick up Trine if you're looking for a single-player experience. If you want multiplayer, you want to be looking at Trine 2, and the reason for that is that Trine 2 has online multiplayer, whereas the original only has local co-op. They're both fairly similar games, although Trine 2 is definitely better. It's got higher fidelity graphics, it has a greater set of skills, and a revamped balance system between the three classes. It's entirely possible to beat the game using just one single class, but in single player, the game is designed to switch between classes at will. It reminds me a little of Lost Vikings, although what I would say about it is that it's more of a puzzle platformer mixed in with some action. There's plenty of sword play and killing enemies with your bow and arrow, or even flattening them with various items that you can levitate as the wizard, who doesn't actually have any direct attacks. The biggest strength of this game, though, has got to be the fairy tale aesthetic. Frozen Byte did a stellar job of putting together an absolutely gorgeous game that really oozes this fairy tale wanderlust in every possible aspect. So not only is it a really solid 2.5D action-adventure with platforming, physics-based puzzle solving, and combat, it also happens to be an amazing little story in its own right. Both of these games come highly recommended. Kung Fu Strike: The Warrior's Rise. This is a game that I describe as an RSI simulator, but that would be unfair because it's not a simulator. It will give you bloody RSI. It's a tricky game indeed. It's a Kung Fu brawler, very, very challenging, and it does involve a lot of button bashing, and I would actually recommend a controller for it, even though you can play it with the keyboard. It's maybe not ideal with the keyboard. You can do it, and I have done it myself, but it certainly works better with the controller. The strengths of this title are its fiendish difficulty, as well as its rather nice aesthetic, which does certainly evoke memories of things like Arcane, as well as Street Fighter IV, and a fantastic moveset that really does look like the kind of combat you would expect out of a Kung Fu movie, which is something that not every brawler gets right. I actually enjoyed Kung Fu Strike way more than I thought I would, and for that price, which is ludicrously low, it's absolutely worth having. Foul Play. Man, this is a lot of fun. And it's very, very stylish as well. Classy, one might say. This is a brawler where you reenact the adventures of a famous English explorer by beating the living snot out of various enemies live on stage in front of a theater audience, which is frequently asking you to do various things as sub-objectives. It's a rather interesting spin on the whole thing, and you actually can't die, which might surprise a lot of people. It's all about the score. It's all about the combo. It's all about impressing the audience. It does also have co-op as well, which is very much worth doing, considering it contains a number of co-op-only moves that can be combined together. Foul Play is a nice little bit of stylized entertainment in a really cool setting. Not the best brawler, but extremely enjoyable nonetheless. And unlike most brawler titles, I have a feeling you will very much enjoy the story. Carrier Command Gaea Mission. This is one of those titles that I wouldn't recommend at full price, but when it's this cheap, it's fairly easy to recommend regardless, even though it does happen to have problems. So the old Carrier Command is absolutely ancient by comparison, and this is a 3D reinterpretation of that reminds me a little bit of Hostile Waters Antius Rising, although I do think that Hostile Waters, even though it's older, is a better game than Carrier Command. It is a mixture of a strategy game as well as a vehicular combat title, where your carrier spawns various types of vehicles which can then be used to complete the mission. The AI is a bit weak on this, I've got to say. The story mode is not that great. The best way to play this would be in the strategy game option. The campaign is more of an extended tutorial. But I think you will find a decent amount of enjoyment out of this title. Remote controlling the vehicles is a lot of fun, and you are dealing with some fairly expansive environments. One of those titles that's worth a try at its heavily discounted price, but is something that I wouldn't really touch at full, I'm afraid. Hearts of Iron 3. This is a World War II grand strategy title from the masters of the genre, Paradox themselves. This is the kind of thing that you can sink a huge amount of time into, or you can just get stuck on the tutorial and never go any further than that, and many people do. Hearts of Iron 3 certainly launched with problems, unfortunately. A lot of Paradox games of the day, and indeed now, do launch with that particular issue. This game's been around, however, for 4 years, and it has been patched, and it now runs rather well. It is ridiculously in-depth, but unlike the previous Hearts of Iron games, it's a little bit more accessible, so you probably got the patience this time around to deal with it, and it has a much better tutorial system. An exceptional warfare and diplomatic simulator, if you like diving into lots of numbers and grand strategy wargaming. Take on Helicopters, as well as its DLC, very heavily discounted here. This is another game from Bohemia that I actually wouldn't recommend at full price, but considering the discount, it's actually worth trying out. This game is a helicopter simulator, and you can take part in various missions by flying your helicopter. It seems like a sim, and it kind of is, but it tries to straddle the line between a casual sim and a hardcore, and it really ends up being neither of those things, which is why it's a little bit difficult to recommend at full price. However, the DLC is also available for 90% off, and it in fact actually has 2 pieces of free DLC as well. So if you want to fly some civilian and military helicopters around the place, then you can do that. And the experience is relatively enjoyable. If you've got a joystick, it's probably worth trying just to have an excuse to use the bloody thing. And finally, Warlock Master of the Arcane. Warlock 2 has been announced, which actually excites me quite a bit. This is a very solid fantasy turn-based strategy title that does evoke memories of Master of Magic, although it's not particularly similar to it. If you've played Civilization 5, then you pretty much know how this goes. It's quite similar to the way that the UI and movement in general works in Civ 5, and it's brought to you by the company that made Fantasy Wars as well as Elven Legacy, which are both pretty good. If you like summoning mythical beasts to do your bidding, as well as setting up castles, doing research, and casting mighty spells, then Warlock will scratch that itch. It's also got a bunch of DLC, quite a significant amount in fact, which is also worth having a look at. If you want the whole lot, you can grab the Ultimate Edition, and that's a fairly good deal. There's 5 pieces of DLC for this in total. The meaningful DLC is Power of the Serpent, Return of the Elves, and Armageddon. The first 2 add different races, and Armageddon adds a new mode in. The other 2 pieces of DLC are kind of just items and additional measures, but you don't really need to worry too much about that. Frankly though, while you can skip those 2, if you buy the Ultimate Edition, then you're basically getting them for free anyway, so it's worth having a look at. Yeah, Warlock's a pretty good turn-based game. If you're looking for a fantasy turn-based strategy and you're done with Fall from Heaven 2, then by all means, have a look at Warlock. Alright folks, there you go. That is a wrap-up for the next few days of the good games that I found under the Steam sales section. If there's a bunch more that come on sale over the next week, then I will do another one of these videos. Let me know what you think of the format by posting on the subreddit, and if necessary, we can make changes and evolve the show from there. Thank you very much for watching, folks. I'll see you next time.